Grief doesn't just break your heart, it breaks your whole operating system, the invisible code you didn't even know was running underneath everything you believed. And when my person died, I didn't just lose them. I lost every quiet assumption I had ever made about the universe being remotely fair. I had been a casual believer my whole life, the kind who prays before turbulence and forgets about God somewhere around cruising altitude. But death has a way of dragging you into the theological deep end whether you packed your floaties or not. Here's the thing nobody warns you about. Grief isn't just sadness, it's a philosophical emergency. The ground you thought was solid turns out to have been a very convincing rug, and loss is simply the universe pulling it. I remember sitting with a cup of coffee that had gone completely cold, maybe 2-3 hours after the call, genuinely trying to logic my way through whether anything meant anything anymore. It's a strange place to find yourself, auditing your entire belief system in a bathrobe. The first thing I wrestled with was the classic one, the one philosophers have been losing sleep over for centuries. If something good and powerful and loving is in charge, why does it let the people we need most get taken first? I didn't have an answer then, and I'll be transparent with you, I still don't have a clean one now. What I found, though, was that demanding a clean answer was actually the problem. I had treated faith like a vending machine, inserting good behavior and expecting comfort to drop from the slot. Doubt, it turns out, isn't the opposite of faith. It's more like faith doing push-ups, getting uncomfortable, getting stronger. There was one specific Tuesday, and I remember it being a Tuesday because the mundanity of it felt almost insulting when I drove past a church and felt simultaneously furious at it and desperate to walk inside. That contradiction, that push-pull between rage and longing, became the most honest spiritual experience I'd had in years. I started reading Stoics, Buddhists, theologians, grief therapists who quote Rumi like it's going out of style, and what struck me was that nearly every tradition agrees on one uncomfortable thing. Suffering is not a malfunction, it's load-bearing, structurally essential to the architecture of a real life, which is either deeply comforting or absolutely brutal depending on the hour. Marcus Aurelius wrote that loss is just the universe reclaiming what it lent you, and honestly, some mornings that framing felt like a life raft, and other mornings it felt like the coldest thing a dead Roman could possibly say. The practice I found that actually grounded me wasn't reading, though. It was sitting in silence for 10 minutes every morning and just letting the grief be in the room without trying to fix it or explain it. Here's the misconception I need to address directly, because I believed it too. That having faith means you should grieve less, or faster, or more quietly. That is not faith. That is suppression wearing a cross or a mala bead, and it will absolutely come back to collect with interest. The historical record on this is actually pretty consistent from Job to Dostoevsky to C.S. Lewis writing, "A grief observed after his wife died." The people most spiritually serious about life have also been the most brutally honest about doubt. Lewis literally called God a cosmic sadist in his journal, and he was one of the most famous Christian writers of the 20th century, so if you're feeling guilty about your anger, you're in extraordinarily literate company. The practical lesson I took from all of this is embarrassingly simple. You don't have to resolve the philosophical question to survive the grief. You just have to build small rituals, a walk, a candle, a conversation with someone who won't flinch that keep you tethered to the present while the big questions hang unanswered overhead. Grief taught me that certainty was always the illusion, and that I had been outsourcing my sense of safety to things that were, by their nature, temporary. What remains when you stop demanding the universe explain itself is something quieter, not quite peace, but something adjacent to it, like peace's less polished cousin who shows up anyway. Here's the absurd irony at the center of all of it. The doubt that felt like it was destroying my faith was actually the first time I had ever taken it seriously. You can't really examine something you've never questioned, and grief, as devastating as it is, forced me to own my beliefs rather than just inherit them. I'm not going to stand here and tell you I emerged from this with a tidy spiritual conclusion that would be a lie, and grief deserves better than a lie. What I will tell you is that the wrestling itself, the confusion and the fury, and the moments of unexpected clarity turned out to be the practice. Discipline in grief looks like showing up to your rituals even when they feel hollow, sizing your expectations modestly, and being consistent in the small acts of meaning-making even when meaning feels very far away. You don't need certainty. You need a process you can return to when certainty has left the building. At the end of it, the philosophy that has served me best is the simplest one. You were loved, you loved back, and that transaction is complete and permanent regardless of what the universe does next. Rational preparation here means accepting that more loss is coming, more questions without answers, and deciding in advance that you will grieve those too with honesty and without performing resolution you haven't earned. If any of this landed for you, hit subscribe and go explore our other topics. There's a lot more where this came from.